And we are live again from Rise of AI's future space. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you fed your algorithms and optimized that analog metabolism of yours during our lunch break. We will dive right in again with our next keynote. The topic is challenges of the German AI ecosystem. Really, do we have challenges? Well, I thought everything was going just great, but wait and see. Our speaker has a background in political consulting for Fortune 500 companies. She is a mentor for startups and an advisor to women in AI. But first and foremost, she is managing director of the German AI Association, Germany's biggest AI company network. Please give it up for Vanessa Cann.
Hello, and thank you for the introduction. It's great to be here today and speaking from the drivery. I would like to use the next 20 minutes to speak to you about the challenges of the German AI ecosystem, or at least what I perceive as being the challenges. So actually, we have the ideal preconditions. We have a world-class AI research. So actually, we rank second when it comes to AI research, just behind China. We're actually above USA. So we actually have AI research as a huge asset to our ecosystem, and we're really great at research. And also, another asset, we have a world-class industry. So we're fourth here when you look at the statistics of the GDP, which is a great indicator of industry performance. And that is also a huge asset towards our AI ecosystem. But still, we are not world-class at building AI products. And when you look at this ecosystem map, for example, and that's just one of the couple that are around there, it labels all the AI startups, the 100 global AI startups that CB Insights found promising here. There's a couple of ecosystem maps around. They all vary in the logos and company names they give, but they have one thing in common. They only show two or only a few AI companies. Here in this field, it's Connox and Navis, so only 2 AI companies from Germany, and that's just on a list of 100. For that we have these huge assets too few. And here's why. The one point and argument I want to make is that AI research is still not transferred into products and services. So especially our spin-offs, so the startups that are being funded and founded from our research institution, they're facing large obstacles. Often, they have to share their revenue, they have to give up a lot of their equity. So things that make a bad foundation for finding later stage capital and VCs to invest in. And so it does not really come as a surprise that AI companies in Germany are quite rare. You can see this in a comparison between Israel and Germany. In Israel, and keep in mind that Israel only has a landscape of about as big as our state of Hesse, so only a fraction of Germany. But still, they have around 1,300 AI startups, while Germany only has 300. When you look at this from an ecosystem perspective, so this is our landscape, how it looks in Germany. So it's around 300 companies in Germany, while this is the ecosystem map in Israel. So there's just a load more AI startups there, and that is a really, really big issue here. And the second point and argument I want to make is that our AI companies are still lacking funding. So there's a big gap between what is actually the need of the AI startups when it comes to venture capital funding and what the capital market is giving them. You can see here that actually when you look at all startups in Germany, so across all branches, across all technology fields, you can see that AI startups are actually getting more funding than all startups put together. But still, when you look at the preferred source of funding that you can see here in pink, it's 57.5% of AI startups are wishing for VC funding, but only 21.1% are actually getting it. So the venture capital gap, the funding gap here is large at 36.3%. And it's particularly later stage capital that is missing. So compared to Israel, for example, we have a per capita investment that is 30 times higher in AI companies than it is to Germany. And that's just something that's also showing its impact on the ecosystem. So when it comes to the results, our companies are just staying small. The teams have to focus for a long time on actually building their product, their service, whilst the companies in Israel and also in the USA can really grow and scale and internationalize. They usually invest a lot in becoming more visible. They invest in marketing and therefore become more visible towards potential clients. They invest in also in visibility towards venture capital firms. So then again, they get more investment, and that's why these companies are going so high and are so much better in their performance. And the third point I want to mention at this point is that our AI companies are still seeking clients. And that might come as a surprise because I said in the beginning, our established industry is one of our biggest assets. But even though 3 or 4 AI startups are already cooperating with established companies, and you can see here that most of them have really seen established industry also as the asset of the German market. So most of them are working together with other companies, are working on a B2B basis, so are working with different companies and not B2C with clients and end customers. So it's really down to working with established industries, and still it's especially SMEs, so the 90% of our economy, those that are really, that's the backbone of our society and our economy, that rarely meet startups, because startups are based there where the venture capitals are, so they rarely meet. They're usually based in Berlin or in Munich, some of them in Hamburg, or even where the big tech universities are, so around the KIT in Karlsruhe or RWTH in Aachen, but that's not where actually the SMEs are sitting, and that's a big issue. So they rarely meet, and they rarely have the opportunity to actually collaborate on that basis. So it doesn't really come as a surprise that our industry at the moment is not very much investing in AI, especially the smaller companies aren't investing in AI. Around every 7th company at the moment is working on an AI product. So that's still a wide range of opportunities that we have here that we haven't really earned up to. So it's a big issue. But I am optimistic because the discussion is winning in speed. Also, of course, because of the corona crisis, so I think that's one of the big benefits we've seen in this year, that in 2018, 87% of AI company or of established companies have said that AI is not a topic for them, whilst today actually 22% are planning to use AI, are planning AI projects, or 6% are already using AI. So if you want to learn more about what artificial intelligence is all about and how our ecosystem is comprised, please feel free to check out our study that we brought about in autumn together with the German Startups Association, the Telekom Hubraum, and also the Institute for Applied Artificial Intelligence based in Stuttgart. You can find it on our website, both in German and English language, whichever you prefer. But I think the question that is open now is, how can we still become world leaders in AI, or can we still become leaders in AI? And I think my answer to this question is definitely yes, we can. We can still become world leaders in AI. And here's just 4 points that I want to outline, which I think are the steps we should go towards a brighter AI future and also a better AI ecosystem. So the one point I want to stress is we really need clear and proportional regulation. That is something that's very important for our small companies. I'll dig into that in a second, because I think that's one of the most substantial points at the moment. The second point I want to mention is we really need more education on AI, starting in schools, going through universities, and also ending in like smaller and medium-sized companies and also corporates. They really need to know what AI is about and what benefit AI can have for them. And the same with entrepreneurship, especially the people, the experts working in research, they need to learn more about entrepreneurship, because it's not that the talents are missing, it's about an entrepreneurial mindset that we have to get going, so that the research results that we already have really hit the road and are transformed into products and services. The third point that I find important is investing in young companies. This is not only like up to the business angels and the VCs to invest in companies, I think it's also down to the state. So now it's 5 billion that the federal government has deployed for the use of artificial intelligence. Young companies have so far only seen little of this. I think we really have to invest in young companies because that is where the innovation is coming from. And then the fourth point I want to mention is the incentives we have to give towards investors and also established companies to invest in AI. And I think that's all down to also tax incentives, but giving them the opportunity to really see the potential of AI and working with AI companies. But as I said, I want to dive deeper, because the time is only short, into one topic, the clear and proportional regulation. You've just seen one keynote about this topic, and you've seen that, especially on a European level, it's a very important topic right now, and there's a lot going on. So we've discussed this on quite a wide range in our association on how we want to get going when it comes to regulations, what our recommendations are. And this is what we ended up with. So one point is for us that proportionality is key. So in general, it's that algorithms are not good or bad. It really boils down to the use case you deploy AI in. So it depends on which use cases you use artificial intelligence in. And there are use cases that are a threat, that are a risk towards our democratic values or our risk towards our lives. And these are the regulations that we have to have in place. So we have to regulate risk-based use cases. But there's also very many use cases that don't actually present a threat, and they should have the bureaucratic leeway to just go ahead and bring their product, their service to the market, because otherwise we won't have the potential to also strive on a worldwide basis. The second point I want to mention is that AI applications should be measured against human performance. So eventually, AI is not at 100% accuracy, and I think it will never actually be there in many use cases. So what we actually have to measure it against is that human performance is not at 100% either. So we still have to have an AI application that is better than what the human benchmark is, but our orientation should always be the human benchmark. So the AI should be better than the human, but still we cannot say that an AI application should be at 100% before it hits the road. And then the third point is that AI use cases should be regulated by using existing regulation. So actually, the wheel does not have to be reinvented in that way. We've always, as a society, have regulated different fields, different industries more stricter because they were a bigger risk towards our life, but a bigger risk towards our democracy. For instance, the field of mobility or the field of health. So we should really look at these industries that are already actually regulating AI use cases, and they should be reviewed and in many cases updated so that it's clearer how we can actually regulate AI. So we should really go ahead and regulate AI along the industries that are already regulating the field so that we don't have a doubling on that end. And now many stakeholders are actually pushing for the fourth point. So they're pushing for a general AI regulation, but we actually do not see a general AI regulation as being feasible. On the one hand, it's very difficult to define what AI actually clearly is, especially on a legal basis. And it is also very difficult to see which software actually entails AI, because not all software is labeled with there's AI inside. So it's very difficult to actually see which software do I have to regulate. So in the end, we'll probably have to check every software, every digital process to see if there's an AI inside and if it has to be regulated on that sort. And then the fifth point I want to stress, and that's something that's very important for us, is that regulation must not place an extra burden on SMEs and startups. Those are the main innovation drivers at the point, and they will be in the future. So we really have to take care that we are not burdening them even further with the bureaucratic regulations. We should really see that we foster SMEs and startups and using AI, and that's one point that's very important for us. And then, to come to an end, who we are the German AI Association, and the members of our association are both innovative SMEs, they're startups, AI experts, all with a focus on the development and application of AI technology. And with being so, we have Germany's largest AI network. And it's our mission to really strengthen Germany's AI ecosystem. We're pushing towards a more sovereign European Union. We want to strengthen the AI ecosystem by bringing together entrepreneurs across Europe so that they can exchange, but also so that they can learn from each other and build their network. And then the third thing that's very important for us is also bringing and fostering openness and innovative strength in established companies so that they can master the digital transformation. So I'm looking forward to tackling AI together. Let's tackle AI together. Please feel free to reach out to me when you are interested in either becoming part of our network or you're an established company and want to see how you can interact with AI companies. You can find my email address here. You can also find me on LinkedIn. And now I'm looking forward to your questions. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Vanessa. We don't have too many questions from the audience yet, so please, dear audience, feel free to ask more. We're delighted to take them. Let me maybe first challenge some of the things you said, which I widely agree upon, but still, I think there are some ideas that we could discuss. One thing is, you would love to have incentives for SMEs and established companies, right? And isn't this part of what is wrong with Germany? That having great AI technology, promising startups, great research not being an incentive enough, that we have to give the companies an additional cookie to even try to work with startups. Isn't that like the primordial sin maybe of our ecosystem?
Well, I think I agree to you in some parts, but I think it's also because AI is such a complex topic. I think many SMEs actually do not know what AI is so far about and also how it can benefit them. So I think we really have to help SMEs in learning and understanding more about AI. We have to break it down to the use cases, so it really boils down to which fields AI can be used in and can really be beneficial for the companies. And I think they should not only learn it from the startups, they should also learn it from other SMEs. So I think it's very important for SMEs that are the pioneers in this field that they market this more openly, because I think it's very important for our industry not to be afraid of sharing data, not to be afraid of working with artificial intelligence, but really embracing what AI can do for them. And I think Corona showed how much potential there is inside it, so I really hope that many are seeing this potential right now.
Right, thank you. There are two maybe complementing, maybe contradicting questions. The first one is, will regulation of AI prevent companies from starting at all?
Yeah, so I hope not, because I think in the end it's not so much about more regulation or less regulation. I think it all boils down to the clarity of regulation. So at the moment, our AI companies are working with very outdated legislation. So all the legislation that they are working with is, of course, or was put into place before the digital transformation actually came into being, and especially AI. So I think it's good that the AI Commission is very much pushing for regulation in this field, but I think we really have to, we have to find a middle way in that sense, that we really have to look at which fields are risky, and these have to be regulated.
Right, and you might have answered a little bit of the second, maybe complementary question. Doesn't regulation always have to place a burden on the companies that are regulated to be effective at all?
I actually do not think so, because what I can see right now is that many AI companies, human by design or value by design is very much in their DNA. So I think a lot of companies are deciding to launch their company here in the European Union because they think values are so important in artificial intelligence. So many of them are already discussing how data security, privacy, transparency, and so on can play a part or be incremental to their product. So I think we really have to get there, that we give them principles so that it's easier for them to see how they can actually produce a product that's value by design or human by design in the end.
Right, I see. Let's talk about another idea that I don't want so much to challenge as to maybe dive a little bit deeper into. You said there, in many fields, we should not even try to invent new regulation because we have existing regulation in place for a certain sector, for instance. But for a lot of the laws that we have, I think we have an actor in mind that we can hold responsible for something. For instance, like the driver of a car. Obviously, this is a thought that is we're going into the uncanny valley when we think about an AI, for instance, or any piece of software as an actor. This is something we will surely have to solve. What is your view on this? Do you see this problem? How would you solve it?
Yeah, so I think it is an issue. I think it's a question, especially for the AI startups that are working very much with companies that are then kind of building the product for the end consumer. So I think it is a very big regulatory issue, and I think we need clearance on that. And that's why it's so important that this is being discussed right now.
Right. You told me, or you told us, and I've heard it very often, that we especially have problems in the end game for startups, right? When it comes to scaling up. Is this the main problem of your members as well?
I think in part it is. It definitely is a big issue. Also in Corona times, many were also seeking for example, state funding. I was saying that kind of the state also has to start investing in young companies and not only into the established companies. But I think it's very much a culture question. And like the entire ecosystem in a way is a culture question. And I think we can see this in the VCs too. So I think it's very much showing your business plan, looking into numbers and having a product that's 100%, and you can't really expect that from a company that's only in the starting positions and is building up their company right now.
Yes.
So I think we have to invest more in visions than in numbers, and I think that's something where we have to learn compared to the US or Israel, China.
Yes, I absolutely agree. Of course, this probably will not change overnight, and now there are a lot of people thinking about founding a company, or maybe they just founded a company 1 or 2 years ago and think, oh man, maybe I made the wrong decision to start one in Germany. Like, is there a possibility if you're like a couple of years in and you see that you can't make it here because there simply is not enough capital to change gears, to maybe move to the Silicon Valley, or would you in maybe some cases advise for people to leave Germany before starting a startup?
Well, I think what we're seeing is already that startups are actually not only seeking VC money in Europe, but they are already looking abroad.
Right.
I think that's something, especially from the German AI Association's perspective, that we want to and have to change. So I think it has to be our obligation as Germany to not only see how our companies can launch here with, for example, money that we're already investing with scholarships like Exist, and those are programs that really help companies to launch in the beginning, but we really have to seek how we can play out in the end game too, and how we can help our companies also exit here and not giving the fruits to other countries,
right.
what we have kind of at the beginning planted, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. There is a question from Marcus. I'm not sure if I understand it completely. Are your members willing to exchange openly on big data and AI? Maybe he means exchanging big data, right? Or maybe exchanging code or ways to work with one another. So because I mean, the exchange about it, that just talking about it, they're all willing to. But what do you know the position of your members on this?
Definitely. So I think it very much goes into the direction that AI startups especially have to find solutions about the rareness of data. They're often working with established companies who are giving them data, and SMEs especially aren't too much open at the moment to sharing their data. They're very much still hesitant and worried about what might happen. I think the GDPR didn't really help in that terms, and that we still don't have enough clarity on what is allowed and what not. But I think especially startups are reaching out in our network, but also across the European Union, and trying to work together and collaborate more easily, because I think that's the only way how they eventually will grow.
Right. How good is the image of the German startup scene when it comes to AI? How open are the doors of VCs overseas, for instance?
So more open, as I showed in the chart earlier. So they are better off than the startups in general, but they are more often looking also for VC funding. So more of the AI startups are very much dependent on VC capital to actually go through with their company.
But the VCs are not waiting for German AI companies to come over.
Not so much, I think.
Okay, yeah.
but they're definitely interested, and they have a global perspective, so they don't actually invest in a national market. They invest in the companies that they find more promising, and if it's a German company, then they will invest in it.
Right. Let me ask you one question, because you've obviously having a lot of talks also with people from VCs, people from the realm of politics, and so on. And I think the problem is widely known, right? The problem is widely known, that we have a problem with investors. We have a problem in the end game of startups, so to speak. Many people agree, but I think there is not much underway to solve the problem, right? Do you agree? And do you have an idea why?
Yeah, I think there's still a step between agreeing and really understanding for yourself.
Okay.
I think that might often be the gap, actually. So at the moment, I am seeing that there are plans. As I said, the federal government is planning to invest 5 billion. So I think there's really
and maybe 2 more, as we heard from Doro Bär. They're thinking about it.
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of interest in investing in this area, but the question is how to invest and how can we really bridge the gap between research and actually then what we get onto the streets. I think that's the biggest challenge that I'm seeing right now, and I think it's really up to all players, from VCs to SMEs, so to the potential clients, to really the research institutions, to just become more open and really foster young companies to be established.
Right, and that is why your work is so important and why we are so happy that you're contributing to AI. Thank you very much, Vanessa Cann.
Thanks for being
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.